I got goals to chase, I got roads to pave. Not yet where I wanna be, but I got close today. I went ghost today, I got least to say. I be focused on these dreams like I didn't sleep today.
Jeremy, welcome to the Relikks squad and to our first official podcast guest. We've been, filming all day, but you're the first official guest, so welcome. When we were kind of thinking of the podcast and guests we'd be having, you were right there on the list just because, you're an influencer, kind of, right?
Not kind of. I wouldn't say kind of.
Not kind of. You are, right? Yeah. So, influencers sometimes don't want to be called influencers, so I'm always a little delicate with that word. But, welcome. I want to preface this. We reached out to you before the big announcement of your new position with tag rating. So first off, congratulations with that. I think having hobby-minded people in these types of positions is very important to grow the industry and grow different spaces of that. So, please speak to that, whenever you want. So congrats. I think your J. Lee Sports Card Live what's your Instagram handle? Give us the correct one.
Yeah, it's @JLee_Sports Cards Live.
There you go. And at tag rating, is that what it is?
Exactly. At tag rating is also the tag IG account. Yeah.
Beauty. So welcome.
Thank you guys. Thank you very much.
So I guess, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about how you got into sports cards, where you're at with sports cards now, and yeah.
Sure. I mean, it's a bit of a long story because I've been doing this since like 1980, discovered cards with my cousins, hockey cards, realized that, these are little pictures of players that I had seen on the ice. I used to go to the WHA games in the 70s with my dad and loved reading the stats on the back, tried to memorize them all, like any good Canadian kid did with hockey cards and like our American counterparts down south did with baseball cards. And collected all the way through high school. Used to put together the O-Pee-Chee hockey set every year in binders. In 91, opened up an LCS in Winnipeg when I was in university. Kept it open for about 3 years, right during the heart of the junk wax era, 91 to 94. The second half of the 90s, kind of the one time during the hobby where I wasn't as active, but I was still involved. Just wasn't as active, and now I love that era. I call it the creative era with all those nice inserts and stuff like that. 2000 came around, was working now and started, really just jumped right back in with both feet. Haven't looked back. I collect all sports from 1888 to 2022, focus on Hall of Fame rookies, collect a bunch of memorabilia sets throughout the different years. And in 2012, I acquired the online community message board called Hobby Insider. And that kind of gave me connections to some industry insiders. And I still own it to this day. And then in April 2020, I started Sports Cards Live just sort of on a whim and didn't know what I was going to make of it. But for my first episode, I thought I better bring on somebody who's going to bring some people to watch. So
that's
I
what we
reached out
did.
to Carvin Chung. Carvin's, sorry, what was that?
I said, that's what we did.
Yeah. So, yeah, I reached out to Carvin Chung, who was a friend of mine going back to about 15 years. He was the inventor of Exquisite and the Cup at Upper Deck. You guys are familiar with Carvin. I said, Carv, I'm going to go live on YouTube on Saturday. You want to come on? I'll interview you. We'll see what happens. He's like, yeah, why not? Let's do it. And at this point, I mean, he was known, but not like he is now in social media as being the arc. Now he's got the blue check mark on Instagram and everything. So I kind of like to poke fun at him and say, hey, you're famous now because of me. I kind of brought you out, but he would have got there eventually on his own for sure. Anyway, did that interview and it went really well. I didn't want to kind of pigeonhole myself as being just a hockey guy. So I thought having Carvin on with his Exquisite connection would bring the basketball people in as well. And it did. And that was the first episode. First episode was just me sitting here, but the second episode was Carvin. And then I thought, I guess I better bring in someone else on for the next show. And it just went and went and went. And now here we are. I think tonight I'm going to do episode 158 or 159, something like that. And I've got a few spin-off shows, and I've been hired to do shows for a couple of companies in the space. I do actually tomorrow. I do a show for Collectible, the fractional ownership company. Tomorrow will be Collectible Live episode number 50. So a bit of an anniversary episode there. And I also cover the PWCC Premier Auctions once a month. So that was 2 nights ago on Thursday. Done that about 15 or 16 times. And a few, several collaborations throughout the hobby content creator world. You said influencer. I prefer the word inspirer because, I try to just I'm passionate about the hobby. I love cardboard. I love it. And I just try to not influence, but more inspire people. And hopefully that comes across.
Yeah, we always kind of talk about it, right? Like cardboard, and we're not saving lives. Let's have fun with it as much as we can. And I kind of mentioned that there's so much drama always going on for different reasons, or, at the end of the day, we're grown men playing with sports cards and little athletes on cardboard. Let's have fun with this. Let's enjoy it. Like, obviously there's a lot of money involved, but at the end of the day, what are we doing here, right? Like, what is this really, right? So love it.
Can I just make one comment? Because we often do sort of, I don't want to say trivialize, but we do kind of just minimize the importance of what we are doing. And, you just made the comment, we're not here saving lives, but let's think about that for a moment, because we actually might be. And just hear me out for a second. There's a lot of people that are, introverts, maybe didn't have a lot of friends in high school, that sort of thing. And then when you find this hobby and you find people that have the common interest, all of a sudden you are part of something. You're a part of a team, you're part of a group, you're part of a community, a subculture. And now you can go to these card shows, these live events, and actually connect with people. So yes, we're not saving lives, but we might be having a big impact, the hobby, on people who otherwise might not be as socially successful, or that sort of, you know what I mean?
I could not agree more. Yeah, I was gonna say, we talk about this. We say this, like, obviously when you have an LCS, and as we do, sometimes we run a after school program. Right, like we've got a daycare in our store Monday to Friday. Even today, it's Saturday. 3:05, the bell rings. We got kids in the store, right? So, tough to deal with sometimes. But the good part about it is, these kids are off the streets, right? Like, they're doing something. They're hustling. They're doing a lot of good with this. They're trading up. They're learning money management. They're learning hobby aspects, right? Like just collecting and caring and giving a shit about something, as opposed to being in front of a screen, which we are all guilty of a lot of, right? So
they're in a safe place. They're in a safe place in your store, and they're learning how to interact with people who are, twice, if not more, their age. And that's a life skill that's should take them far. I've been setting up at the Toronto Expo since like 2005, and I remember kids and 12, 13 years old coming up to me back then, and I treated them with respect back then. Here we are 15 years later, I still see them, and now they're hustlers, they're grinders in the good sense, and they have no problem holding their own with people who are still much older than them and negotiating them and not being taken advantage of. So I think the hobby offers a lot of skill set, a big skill set for young people, and a safe place, and there are a lot of worse ways that we could be spending our money.
Absolutely. And these kids are amazing these days. Like, we're right across the street from our store right now, but we popped in and we've got a regular there and right there. He probably knows more about sports cards than all of us combined. Like, this kid lives, breathes, trades up. Like, he's a shark. He is a shark. 14 years old. He is a shark. And it's like, like, amazing to see this guy.
And we watched him. We watched him progress into this. He was a day one customer, sort of came in very shy, like to your point, right? Like timid guy, not as like socially out there. And here he is now, like sort of coming in, calling the shots, wheeling and dealing. But I wanted to ask you something along those lines, right? You've been in this space a long time. You had an LCS at one point. Now with the price points that are floating around with sports cards and it being as expensive as it is, and I always sort of say it's definitely an adult hobby now, right? There's a lot of grown sort of people with budgets that are playing in the space. Do you find that, through your sort of eras of seeing this hobby mature, that it's, is it doing enough for the young sort of collector? Can we be doing more to sort of be inclusive? I used to walk into a shop with $5 in my pocket, feel great, buy a pack. Nowadays, like, you got to save your bar mitzvah money just to get something off the shelf. Like, what's your perspective on that?
I mean, listen, you can't go into a card shop or a 7-Eleven anymore and buy packs of cards for 35 cents like you could in the 80s, right? So it's not the same as it was. And really up even into the 80s, the gum was still a big thing. It was like, here, buy a stick of gum, get 10 cards along with it, right? The cards were the premium. Now the cards are the product. There's a few things I can say to that. First of all, are we doing enough? Well, you got to commend Upper Deck up here in Canada, at least, for their partnership with Tim Hortons, their partnerships they've had with Canadian Tire, where you can go into these places that have way more exposure to the public than an LCS does. I mean, obviously,
I agree.
Right? It's Crosby and McKinnon on these national commercials talking about buying a pack of cards. I don't know if they're 99 cents or $1.99, but that is today's 35-cent pack of the 80s. So I think that there is that, which is a really good grassroots and entry point for young collectors to collect that Tim Hortons set. They're nice cards, and it's not going to break the bank. I also am a big fan on Halloween coming up here in a few days. I give out team bags with 10 commons in it every Halloween. I've been doing this for, I don't know, as long as I can remember, as long as I've owned a house. I've been giving away hockey cards on Halloween, and I've become known as the hockey card house, and kids come for it. The trick with that is make sure you give them candy as well, not just hockey cards. So that's something that we can do. As far as LCSs, so I was at the Burbank show in California at the end of August, and Rob Veras, who owns Burbank Sports Cards, he was the promoter. He had at the kind of when you walked in the show, he had this corner set up with hundreds of 4-row boxes, and it was the 25 cents card station. You could pick, and they weren't just commons. They were like decent cards. You're not finding any $100 cards in there, but he said you were going to find cards in there from 25 cents to $25 in value if you hunted for them. So, that's what he did. And that station was busy throughout the show with people and kids picking through to find cards at 25 cents each, something that Rob was doing. And I think other LCSs could follow suit. So, you've got dollar boxes at the LCS, you've got the Halloween opportunity, you've got Upper Deck, what they're doing with their Tim Hortons promotions, the partnerships they've had with Canadian Tire, and their National Hockey Card Day as well. Right. So, I mean, there are things that the hobby is doing. And the other thing I say to this whole thing about it being an adult hobby is that there are still, outside of those Tim Hortons cards, there are still cards at different price points at LCSs, MVP, OPG. There are those brands. And what people like to say to that is, well, yes, but all the young kids, they want the best stuff. Good. Motivate. You're motivated, you're inspired. Work your way up to it like everybody else has had. We all start out, with our careers making that entry level salary, and you make your way up. The same thing goes for the hobby to these young kids. Build your way up, aspire to be able to transact in $100 cards, then $1,000 cards, then 5-figure cards. It can happen.
I agree. And we're going to pause in a second, but I remember my first memory of sports cards was McDonald's packs, right? So, and when Tim Hortons came out with it, when was it? Maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago, something like that. They brought it back. I'm like, this is genius, right? Like, this is what is going to bring it back. I remember those McDonald's cards, they were like holographic, they were like 3D. And I remember getting a Potvin, and I was like so happy that I got Felix the Cat there, right? Like Toronto boy. So when Tim Hortons came out with it, I'm like, genius. And I'm still grabbing them, right? I grabbed my coffee, I'm grabbing a pack. Yeah, we ripped a case, I remember last year, and didn't hit anything, but it is what it is, right? It's still fun.
We're good. So, the sort of emergence of the digital age of sports cards, right, has also, I think, had a massive, listen, the whole industry's having a renaissance, right? So clearly, the last 2-3 years have done wonders for the eyeballs and the amount of people that are interested in what's happening in this hobby. But the fact that we now have social media and the ability to sort of do concepts like group breaks and the ability to have big hits be broadcast in real time or spread out through the internet is in this like rapid fire fashion. You know, how are how are things happening? I don't want to say back in the day, but you know, call it 10, 15 years ago, a massive 1-of-1 exquisite Jordan auto gets pulled. I mean, it's weeks, it's months until the hobby knows of its existence versus now. How important is it to have, I mean, you obviously run a very successful podcast. How important is it to have that online presence, that digital influence on a brand and on a hobby?
Yeah, it's a good question. I you know, back in the day, 15 years ago, really before everyone was on Instagram and Twitter showing off their cards, and I mean the proliferation of the thousands of Facebook groups as well, before that was all a thing. Really, you would have to see it on a message board, whether it was the Beckett message boards, Hobby Insider, Sport Card Forum. You'd see people posting them on those places, or you'd see it pop up on eBay. And that would be the first, hey, it appeared. There it is. You know, it was like, if it's not on eBay, it doesn't exist, was kind of the thing back then, right? But what I like the most about the group break and the fact that they're live and they're recorded and they're streamed is that now when a card is pulled, not only does the information disseminate throughout the hobby, you know, very, very quickly, but now we know that that card is authentic, you know, that the patch is authentic. Like, if, you know, let's face it, we see a crazy patch on a sales platform, whether it's an auction house, you know, an online, wherever it is, right away, you start to question, is it a real patch, or was it replaced? Is it a fake patch? Well, it sure is nice to be able to say, hey, check out this stream that happened 4 years ago on such and such's channel. Here is that actual card getting pulled. I think that there's value in that, if nothing else,
sure,
just to authenticate the patches that are coming. So I mean, that's a kind of a different topic, but I think that's important. I mean, the fact that we see these and it gets people excited has caused all these new streaming platforms to just come about. Whatnot, Loops, Card Shop Live, Drip, all these new platforms, these live shopping platforms are succeeding because of live breaks. And that's, who would have thunk that when the original group breakers back like 15 years ago and I'm talking about, there's a guy, Chad, out of the US, Firehand, Irving Manera, who's now Manera Sports Cards, and Klutz Chara. I mean, these were the guys that really invented group breaking back in the day. And now it's a monstrous thing that has overtaken the hobby, such that the manufacturers customize products to optimize group break experiences. So, right? I mean, it's amazing.
And we actually always not struggle with this, but being an LCS, you know, group breaking is obviously a part of our business. It's not the entirety of our business, but we compete against people who are exclusively essentially breakers, you know, don't have the same overhead, don't have the same expenses experience as we do. And, you know, we always try to challenge ourselves to keep up with it. And it's, you know, honestly, it's difficult for obvious reasons. It's frustrating and it's difficult. So, you know, as the manufacturers, to your point, sort of, you know, cater products to these guys, you know, and this is sort of the elephant in the room, I think, on any conversation we have with people that are in the industry, is what do you think Fanatics will do with the industry? Do you think they'll continue along the same lines? You know, there's been a lot of obviously rumors and speculation. Are they going to go consumer direct? Does the hobby shop still have a place in the future of this industry? I'd love to hear your take on what you see in the crystal ball on Fanatics.
It's so tough to know what they're going to do. I mean, you know, with any certainty, but I think that they're going to embrace what's going on. I mean, group breaking and the broadcasting of those group breaks across the various platforms on the internet is a big part of why they're even coming into the space. I mean, it's a big part of why the hobby has blown up. So I think they're going to embrace it. And I think that for the LCSs like yourselves and others who are competing with that, I mean, listen, tough love time, fellas, but you got to adapt. You got to join in. You have to you have to entertain your audience, whether it's when they come into the store or it's online. I mean, when you say we're competing with them, yeah, you are. Yes, you are. And I guess the first step that tells me that you're on your way to success, or that you already are, is that you recognize that. And now the next step is, if you're not already, and I think you guys are to a degree, but you have to find a way to work your way into that. Nowadays, an LCS, I don't think, can really just survive based on selling wax off the shelf to the people walking into the store. I think it's important to have a nice selection of singles where the inventory rotates on a semi-regular basis. So if I'm a regular and I come in, I know that if I come in every Saturday, there's going to be at least some new inventory there. Yep. At least rotate it in. Have a new arrivals shelf in one of your showcases. I think that's critical right now. And then you need to be broadcasting. It's not, sure, you can have an LCS that doesn't do those things, but there are so many platforms for you to expand your reach, which will grow your brand. Listen, you guys, I think, have done a great job, because from out of nowhere, it feels like, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but a year, 18 months ago, I started seeing the Relikks brand on my social media streams all the time. You've had several impressions on me over these past however many months. So you guys you're doing that right. I believe you're branding yourselves right. And you're relatively new as an LCS in the Canadian landscape of the hobby. So I got to give you guys kudos for that. But if you are finding that you're competing against these other streamers, you have to join them. I think you have no option but to join them and to really up your live streaming game if you haven't yet.
For sure. We always talk about it. At the end of the day, it's all about customer experience in store, like a huge focus about that, like in store and online, right? Like, we're always trying to have different singles available, different wax available, price points available. We just got a new cool machine that's going to be there for the kids to have fun, or even the adults. And same thing with online, right? Like different price points for group breaks for people to get in, different multi-sport, different sports, all this type of stuff. So completely agree on that experience.
I know. Sorry, we're running short on time, so I definitely want to talk to you about Tag, and I want to talk to you about your role at Tag, and I make this joke in the store all the time about grading, because let's face it, there is some inconsistency when it comes to grading, and I say your grade depends on how your grader had breakfast that morning, or if he had a fight with his significant other that morning, and when he comes in to grade your card, it'll reflect on the slab. Tag is fairly new in the space. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing there, what sort of the differentiation is with Tag, and what the plan is.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. And yeah, you're right. Grading traditionally has been a game of, spin the wheel almost, as for how your card is going to actually grade versus the technical condition of the card. And that's it. I don't really blame anybody for that. That is just the nature of humanity. We are not consistent and objective in everything that we do. And so, to think that you're going to get the same grade every time you send a card into a human grading company is just not reasonable. And that's, we hear about all the time people saying, oh, I came back an 8. I'm going to send it in again. Maybe I'll get a 9. Or you hear people say, just keep sending it in until you get the grade you want. I think if you look outside into our hobby, and that is kind of the way it is, people think they'll just think we're crazy. Like, what are we that gullible? So Tag was formed 10 years ago by a collector who realized that this was a problem in the hobby, and he set out to develop this AI grading, and he finally succeeded. It took 10 years of development, and so Tag exposed itself or announced itself to the public via my podcast, my YouTube show, Sports Cards Live, in May, June of this year. Basically wanted to reveal themselves, and they wanted to do it on my show, which was very flattering for me. In the process of doing that, we did 5 episodes. Planning for those episodes, I got to know the team at Tag very well. I was down at their facility to see it for myself, to make sure that I wanted to endorse it by having them on my platform. And I went down there and I was blown away with what I saw, the professionalism, the level of detail, just how they want to do everything right, and they want to do it for the right reasons. And I was just, like I said, I was blown away by this. I'd never seen anything like it before. And I thought, you know what? I'm happy to have you guys on my show. I think that you guys are going to be the future of grading, and what an honor to have you on. So we did the episodes. At the end of them was the middle of July of this year. My job was coming to an end because my company was acquired, et cetera, et cetera. And it was really good timing. And we started talking about, maybe I should join the company because I just believed in it so much. I was so passionate about tag grading. And so I ended up joining the company. My title is VP of Business Development. And so right now, I've been traveling a lot to shows, representing the company as we are exhibiting our technology and our slab and our digital image and grading report. Tag is all about transparent slab, transparent grading, transparent process. It is automated. So you can submit the same card to Tag 1,000 times, and you're going to get the same grade 1,000 times. That's just the nature of consistent, reproducible grading. Obviously, somebody had to teach the system over a 10-year period how to grade a card. You can't just buy a computer at Best Buy and it's going to know how to grade a card. You need expertise to teach the architect of the AI. So we have that. We have somebody who was actually a senior grader at PSA for 8+ years, very well respected. His name is Scott Maxwell. He's the one with his team that taught the AI how to actually grade a card, and that was outsourced to a firm who specializes in AI for military and for medical devices and that sort of thing. So really high-end stuff. And that's what Tag is aiming to do: bring consistency and reliability to the grading landscape, and no more asking the question, why did my card grade the way it did? With every card, you get a detailed image and grading report that shows you every defect on the card, where it is, and eight subgrades, front and back. 4 subgrades doesn't make sense to me logically. The back centering and the front centering are mutually exclusive. You can't look at them at the same time.
Yep.
Why blend one grade? And the blending requires a subjective weighting of front versus back. We just give you the front and the back. Here it is. Decide for yourself what's more important. So
love it.
That is tag grading in a nutshell.
Love it.
It's
Love
very
it. Love it.
exciting to see innovation coming into an old school hobby.
Let's do some rapid fire as we wrap it up.
Rapid fire, couple of questions. Biggest sale you've ever done, sports card?
Oh gosh, biggest sale I've ever done. I did a deal that was like $28,000 going each way, where
Nice.
I gave up $28K and I took in $28K worth of cards. Biggest sale, gosh, I don't know.
Okay.
It's in
Biggest then. What about biggest purchase?
The most I've ever spent on a card was $20,300.
Nice.
That's the most I've ever spent. And then I've had a couple where I've spent about just over 17 grand.
Nice. What card was the 20K card?
Michael Jordan Jambalaya.
Nice. Ooh. Super cool. Those are back in Jambalayas are had some hype last month or so. Sorry about that.
That was the big, I asked the question. I apologize. We'll wrap in a couple minutes, but we asked the question of what is the single biggest, like, I've recently taken a big loss on a card. So I always wonder if I'm the only sucker out there that owns an LCS and is taking these hits. But what's the biggest loss you've ever? I always wonder, what's the biggest loss you've ever taken?
I mean, guys, a lot of the cards I buy for the long-term hold for my collection. Yeah. I have like a 20-year horizon. I don't do a ton of flipping, but I do buy and sell some cards. But I have a card that I had a really big offer on it back in March, like over $200,000 offer. And now if I were to sell it, that I would probably get an offer of like 80,000. Now the card isn't for sale. And I think eventually it'll be worth that 200 again. Mm-hmm. So I've never really locked in a huge loss or realized. I have some unrealized losses, but even then, I mean, I've been buying big cards for 20 years, if not more. I've got some Lemieux rookies I've had since the 80s. So I don't have a huge loss really under my belt, fortunately.
That makes me feel great. Thank you.
I was gonna say card you'll never sell, but it seems like there's a lot of them there. What's your favorite card you own? Like your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, Gary, what that's like when you're a collector. Like they're all my babies, right? I love them all. So, but one of my favorite cards in the hobby is the 1948 Leaf Jackie Robinson rookie.
Nice.
I think that's probably my favorite sports card of all time. But when people ask me if you could only keep one card, what would it be? It's like at that point, take them all. I'm out.
Yeah. It's the way I am. Fantasy football. I'm so scared to make a trade. It's like anybody I draft, I just want to. I'm getting screwed somehow on this.
Amazing.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah, let's wrap it. I appreciate you making your way on here, and this is our first one. And even as we were having some technical difficulties, we're saying to ourselves, lots of learnings here, and going to improve on the next one for sure. But really appreciate you making yourself available.
Absolutely. And Jay, look forward to seeing you and connecting at the expo coming in. What do we wait? 3 weeks? 3 weeks, maybe. Something like that.
And Thursday night after the show, Jack Astor's, not far from the International Center. I'm hosting a dinner there, dinner and drink. So come on down and join us if you can. You're more than welcome and invited to come down there. So it'd be great to see.
Gotta ask my wife first, but yes, see you there. Amazing, thank you, Jay. Appreciate it.